My neighbor's desperate warning shattered my world. He told me, "Run while you can. Your son and his wife are monsters." My legs buckled when I asked what they had done, and his reply nearly made me faint. The truth he revealed changed everything. The Henderson contract lay scattered across my mahogany desk, like fallen leaves. 23 years of building Ramos Logistics, and now it was gone. They had pulled out. $2 million in annual revenue, vanished. My coffee sat cold, a bitter layer of cream floating on top. I leaned back in my leather chair, the weight of all 67 years pressing into my shoulders. The desert sun blazed through the blinds, striping the financial reports with unforgiving lines. I knew the damaged 3 employees, maybe 4, would have to go. The phone rang, its shrill cry slicing through the silence. I almost ignored it, but then I saw the caller ID, Milton, my son. 3 years since our last conversation. 3 years since he stormed out of this office, shouting that I had no faith in him. My hand hovered over the button, hesitation heavy in my chest. "Hello, Dad?" His voice was softer than I remembered, uncertain, almost fragile. He admitted we hadn't spoken in years, and that it was mostly his fault. Then, without waiting, he added, "Flossy, and I want to invite you over. We've missed you." My eyes drifted to Martha's photograph on the corner of my desk. She always said I was too stubborn with the boy, too hard. "When were you thinking?" I asked. "This Friday. Flossy wants to cook for you." "I owe you an apology, Dad, for how things ended." The memory of that fight clawed its way back. Milton, 35, asking for $50,000 to invest in some app he swore would revolutionize transportation. I'd refused. Told him to get a real job instead of chasing pipe dreams. "You never believed in me," he'd shouted, slamming the door so hard Martha's photo fell from the wall. But now his tone was different. Hopeful. Tentative. "I've missed you too, son," I answered, my voice rough. "I'll drive up Friday morning." He sounded almost relieved. "Really? That's wonderful. We live in Beverly Hills now. I'll text you the address." After hanging up, I sat for a long moment in silence. The Henderson contract suddenly felt small, insignificant. Family outweighed business. I pulled out the luggage Martha and I once used on our anniversary trips and carefully folded clothes into it. For Milton, I chose the Rolex he'd always admired. For Flossy, the diamond earrings Martha had worn on our wedding day. She'd want them to stay in the family. The Cadillac, my faithful 1995 DeVille, waited in the driveway. As I loaded the trunk, the Arizona sky burned with streaks of orange and red. Tomorrow, I would see my son again. Tomorrow, we would rebuild. Friday morning came with desert clarity. At 9 a.m., I backed the Cadillac onto the open road. Phoenix disappeared in the rearview mirror as Route 10 stretched out ahead, carrying me not to a client meeting, but to something far more precious. Family. The radio played, Hotel California, and I hummed along despite the irony. The desert rolled past, in endless shades of beige and brown, interrupted only by the occasional Joshua tree. It reminded me of Martha, who always said the emptiness gave the soul room to breathe. A memory surfaced Milton at 12, in the back seat of this very car, begging to drive on our way to Roosevelt Lake. I'd laughed, told him he wasn't tall enough. Later, we posed with a fish too small to keep, but we held it proudly, grinning as though we'd caught a giant. Martha had laughed so hard at our failed attempts to cook over the campfire. Those were golden days, before life grew complicated. Hours later, I fueled up at a dusty gas station. The old cashier asked if I was visiting family. "My son," I said. "Haven't seen him in years." The man smiled, his weathered face softening. "Family's everything." You're doing the right thing. By afternoon, I crossed into California. Palm trees replaced desert scrub, and the air thickened with coastal green. Traffic grew heavier as I neared Los Angeles. Beverly Hills unfolded before me, all manicured lawns and glittering pools. Luxury cars flashed around me while my Cadillac suddenly felt like a relic. Finally, the GPS directed me to Palm Drive. My pulse quickened as a white modernist villa came into view, its glass walls gleaming in the sun. A fountain sparkled at the center of the circular driveway, rainbow droplets catching the light. I parked, my chest tight with a strange blend of pride and intimidation. Milton had made it. He had done far better than I ever imagined. I gathered the carefully wrapped gifts and rang the doorbell. The chimes echoed inside, a melody more expensive than most people's rent. Through frosted glass, I saw only shifting shadows. No footsteps. No voices. I waited, adjusted my shirt, knocked again, louder this time, and Milton? Flossy? It's Dad. Silence. The camera above the door blinked steadily, recording me as I stood there like a stranger. Hello. My voice cracked against the still air. Anyone home? The house remained quiet. And in that moment, unease began to creep into my bones. At 11 o'clock, the house was still silent. The only sounds the gentle splash of the fountain and the faint hum of life in the wealthy neighborhood. I walked the perimeter of the villa, gift bags heavy in my sweating hands. The backyard was a paradise. Sparkling pool, pristine patio furniture, and a fully stocked outdoor kitchen that gleamed under its canvas cover. Through the sliding glass doors, I glimpsed a living room that looked more like a luxury hotel lobby than a home. Everything was flawless, expensive, and utterly empty. The back doors were locked tight. Frustration and unease gnawed at me as I circled back to the front and pulled out my phone. Milton's number rang 4 times before going to voicemail. You've reached Milton Ramos. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. Milton, it's Dad. I'm at your house like we planned. Where are you? Call me back. I tried Flossy's number next, though I'd only spoken to her a handful of times during Christmas calls. Her voicemail chirped, This is Flossy. I can't come to the phone right now. Flossy, it's Samuel. I'm here for dinner. Please call me back. The street remained unnervingly still. Across the way, gardeners worked behind their masks of leaf blowers. The only signs of life in this perfect neighborhood. A security patrol car crawled past, the driver staring at me for a long moment, making me feel like an intruder rather than a guest. I sat on the front steps, setting the gifts beside me. The concrete radiated warmth through my slacks, though the portico shielded me from the worst of the sun. Surely there was an explanation. Traffic, an emergency, some mix up. People didn't invite their estranged fathers to dinner just to vanish. And yet, my phone stayed stubbornly silent. No return calls, no apologetic texts. The cheerful fountain began to sound mocking, a taunt rather than a comfort. By 4 o'clock, the sun had shifted, stripping away my shade and leaving me exposed, sweating through my shirt. My leather shoes pinched against the unyielding concrete. Around me, the street of immaculate mansions felt ghostly. Shut gates, silent driveways, the peculiar emptiness of wealth. I had never felt more out of place. Doubt slithered into my mind. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe Milton had meant next Friday. Maybe my eagerness to reconcile had made me hear what I wanted. But no, I remembered his voice, clear as day. This Friday, Flossy had sounded excited, even eager. Still, the weight of disappointment grew heavy in my chest. It was the same ache I'd felt when Milton missed my 60th birthday, the same hollow sting from his absence at Martha's funeral. Perhaps nothing had changed. Perhaps it never would. With stiff knees, I stood, lifting the now heavy gift bags that seemed foolish in my hands. The Cadillac waited loyally in the driveway, ready to carry me back to Phoenix and my world of contracts and certainty. I reached for my keys, when a voice startled me. "Wait. Don't go in there." I spun around, nearly dropping the gifts, as a thin man emerged from behind a neatly trimmed hedge, an electric trimmer dangling from his hands. His grey hair was disheveled, glasses slipping down his slicked nose. "Excuse me," I said, steadying myself against the hot metal of my car. He glanced toward Milton's house, then back at me, eyes wide with urgency. "Sir, you need to leave. Now, those people are dangerous." The man looked about 50, dressed in a grass-stained polo and dirty gloves, his nervous energy contagious. "This is my son's house," I said firmly, unwilling to indulge his paranoia. "I think you're mistaken." His face drained of color. "Your son? Oh God, you're the father they mentioned." A chill ran through me, sudden and sharp. "What are you talking about? Who mentioned me?" He set down the tremor, stepped closer, and lowered his voice. "Your son and his wife. They killed her father, poisoned him." The words punched the air from my lungs. "That's impossible. You're mistaken." "5 million in inheritance," he whispered. "He died right after visiting them. Just like you're doing now." My legs wobbled beneath me. "No. My son would never." "He was healthy when he went there for dinner." The man insisted. A week later, he was dead. His voice shook as much as his hands. "I'm Larry. I live next door. I've been watching ever since." "People die of natural causes," I argued weakly. Larry's voice hardened. "Natural causes don't make a man vomit in his own driveway." Neighbors saw it. He left this house pale as death, retching before he reached his car. The gift bag slipped from my fingers and hit the concrete with a dull thud, the shiny paper crumpling like a cruel joke. "You're telling me my son is a murderer?" "I'm telling you to leave before you become the next victim." Larry glanced nervously at the security cameras, blinking red above the front door. "That woman, Flossy, there's something cold about her. And your son? He's not the same since he married her." My chest pounded as his words sank in. 3 years of silence suddenly had new meaning. Had Milton changed? Had desperation twisted him into something I no longer recognized? "How do you even know about the inheritance?" I demanded. "Small neighborhood. People talk." Her father lived in Pasadena. 70 years old, healthy, golfing twice a week. Then one dinner with his daughter and son-in-law. Boom. Dead within days. The businessman in me started piecing it together. Wealthy father. New marriage. Sudden death. A clean pattern. Too clean. But this was my boy. The same child who had cried when his goldfish died. Who once rescued a stray dog because it looked lonely. Could he really have done this? "I had to warn you?" Larry said, voice cracking. "I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. But that's all I can say." He scooped up his hedge tremor and backed away, fear etched in every movement. "Wait!" I called. "What about the police?" He stopped at his gate, eyes hollow. "Rich people die every day. No evidence, no case. Just don't eat or drink anything. And don't stay the night." Then he vanished behind his hedge, leaving me alone in the furnace heat, with only his words and the oppressive silence of the villa. I picked up the fallen gifts. Though they felt heavier than before, the Rolex inside now seeming less like a gesture of reconciliation and more like proof of my gullibility. My son's words echoed in my head. "You'll regret not believing in me." Back then, I thought it was an angry outburst. Now, It sounded like a threat. And for the first time, I wondered if the man I was here to see was still the son I once knew, or a stranger wearing his face. People didn't kill for money. At least, that's what I used to believe. But headlines told a different story. Inheritance disputes, insurance scams, elderly parents found dead under suspicious circumstances. It happened more often than anyone wanted to admit. I set the gift bags on the Kilax hood and leaned against the sun, warmed metal. The heat pressed down, but I barely felt it. My thoughts drowned out everything, the fountain, the birds, even the passing breeze. If Larry was telling the truth, then Milton and Flossy had invited me here not for reconciliation, but for my death. But if Larry was wrong, if this was all some twisted misinterpretation, then I was standing here like a paranoid fool, sabotaging the one chance I had to rebuild a relationship with my son. $5 million. That's what Larry said Flossy had inherited. Enough to buy this palace, enough to erase Milton's debts, enough to make murder worth considering. My phone buzzed. I snatched it up, heart hammering, only to see a message from my business partner in Phoenix about the Henderson account. The world I knew, contracts, clients, predictable deals, felt impossibly far away now. The clock read 5:30. The sun was beginning its descent, casting Beverly Hills in gold, beautiful and menacing all at once. Then I heard it, a low purr of an engine. Not the rattle of my Cadillac, but something sleeker, smoother. A car was approaching. I had seconds to decide. Leave now or stay and risk everything. A silver BMW rolled into the driveway. Polished chrome gleaming. My chest tightened. I forced my lips into a smile, though my pulse thundered in my ears. The driver's door opened. Milton stepped out, dressed in tailored slacks and a silk shirt. Clothes I knew he couldn't have afforded 3 years ago. His shoes alone probably cost more than my car payment. He looked prosperous, glowing with success, nothing like the desperate man who once begged me for money. "Dad," he said warmly, striding toward me with open arms. "I'm so sorry we kept you waiting." Traffic was murder. That word, murder, landed like a slap. A careless phrase, or something darker. Before I could dwell on it, he embraced me. His voice was casual, his smile genuine. But I couldn't stop cataloging every detail, weighing sincerity against performance. Then Flossy emerged. Blonde hair perfectly styled, designer dress hugging her figure, handbag worth a month's rent. She moved like a woman born for admiration, every gesture choreographed. "Samuel," she beamed, brushing my arm like we were already old friends. "You're even more handsome than your photos. Milton's shown me so many from when he was growing up." Her charm might have felt flattering once. Now it made my skin crawl. "I hope you brought an appetite," she added. "I made all your favorites. Pot roast. Martha's dinner rolls. Martha's dinner rolls. My late wife's recipe. How did she know about that? Milton must have told her. Still, hearing it from Flossy's lips felt invasive, unsettling. I tried to keep my composure as they led me inside. The villa gleamed. Marble floors, chandeliers, priceless art. Every surface screamed money. Milton spoke with pride, like a realtor showing off his prize property. The deeper we walked, the more the house felt less like a home and more like a trap. Then we reached the kitchen. Flossy stood at the stove, humming softly as she stirred a pot. My blood froze. She was humming Martha's song, the tune my wife used to sing while cooking. A melody of comfort, now twisted into something sinister. "I'll just get some water," I said, masking the tremor in my voice. "Glasses are in the upper cabinet, Samuel," Flossy replied without looking back. I opened the cabinet. Crystal stemware sparkled, catching the light. but the door swung wider, revealing something shoved behind the cleaning supplies. A small brown bottle. I reached for it, my instincts screaming. It was out of place, wrong. The label faced me, my breath caught. Potassium cyanide. Handled with extreme care. Warning symbols covered the label, a skull and crossbones grinning up at me like a death sentence. The room tilted. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. Larry's warning hadn't been paranoia. He'd been right. They weren't planning a reconciliation. They were planning a murder. My murder. Even the smallest amount could be fatal. My businessman's brain calculated the odds, while my father's heart shattered. Behind me, the sounds of chopping and stirring continued. Flossy was still humming Martha's favorite song, oblivious to the fact that I had discovered her secret. She probably thought herself clever, tucking the cyanide behind cleaning supplies where no one would ever look. But I had looked, and now I knew. I forced my trembling hands to put the bottle back, exactly as I had found it, sliding it behind the soaps and detergents. The cabinet clicked shut with a sound that seemed deafening in the silence. Then I filled my glass with cold water, the simple act of a guest quenching his thirst, though inside I was a storm of fear and rage. $5 million. A mansion worth millions more. A lifestyle neither Milton nor Flossy could ever afford honestly. The pattern was there, undeniable. They had killed before, and I was next. "How's the water, Samuel?" Flossy called sweetly from the stove. "Perfect," I managed, lifting the glass. My voice sounded steady, but I could barely hear it over my racing pulse. I returned to the living room, every step calculated, every expression measured. Milton looked up from his magazine with that salesman's smile I had taught him decades ago. "Found what you needed?" "Yes," I replied smoothly, lowering myself into the leather armchair. "Beautiful kitchen. You've really made something special here." I chose the seat carefully. Clear view of the kitchen, clear line of sight to Flossy. My instincts screamed to stay alert. Milton launched into a casual conversation about the LA real estate market, bragging about investments and risks. His words washed over me as I watched his wife pour expensive cabernet into 3 crystal glasses. Her movements were fluid, elegant, but her eyes kept flicking toward us, calculating. Then I saw it. She reached into the same cabinet. The brown bottle appeared in her hand. My throat went dry. 1, 2, 3 drops into the glass nearest the stove. A quick swirl, practiced and sure. The bottle vanished back into hiding. The poisoned glass now looked identical to the others, deep red, fragrant, rich with promise, deadly. Flossy carried the tray into the dining room, her humming turning into cheerful chatter. "Gentlemen, dinner is served." Milton clapped his hands together, grinning. "Finally, I'm starving." We walked to the dining room like actors in a play, each of us performing our roles. The table gleamed under crystal light, china set with meticulous precision. Flossy placed the tray at the center, the poisoned glass carefully aligned where she wanted it. "Samuel, you sit here," she said brightly, gesturing to the head of the table. The seat farthest from the door, the least convenient for escape. Milton took his place on my right, Flossy on my left. Perfect symmetry, perfect control. "To family reunions," Milton declared, raising his glass with dramatic flourish. "To healing old wounds and new beginnings," Flossy added smoothly. The poisoned wine waited in front of me, its ruby glow disguising its purpose. My son watched me expectantly. My daughter-in-law's eyes glinted with hunger. "I appreciate the gesture," I said, lifting the glass, but keeping it tilted away from my lips. "But I've stopped drinking alcohol." Shock rippled across Milton's face. "Since when?" You always loved wine with dinner. Doctor's orders. I lied easily. Blood pressure medication. It doesn't mix well with alcohol. For the briefest moment, Flossy's smile cracked. A flash of frustration slipped through before she smoothed it over. Of course. Health comes first. Milton recovered quickly. Too quickly. Flossy makes an incredible juice blend. Apple, cranberry. You'll love it. The glance he gave her wasn't playful. It was a signal. Plan B. Flossy excused herself, her heels clicking against marble as she disappeared into the kitchen. The blender roared a moment later, loud and long, masking whatever she added to the mix. Milton filled the silence with empty talk about Los Angeles, his words tumbling out too fast, too rehearsed. We have exciting plans for tomorrow. He slipped, then quickly corrected. We'd love for you to stay longer. Plans. For after my death. Flossy returned with a glass pitcher, the juice dark red, garnished like something from a hotel menu. She poured a tall glass and set it in front of me with both hands, her eyes never leaving mine. Samuel, she said softly, almost tenderly, you must try this. They watched me like predators, their smiles tight, their bodies tense. The air felt suffocating. It looks wonderful, I said, forcing a smile. But I'll save it for dessert. I don't want to spoil this beautiful meal. Milton leaned forward, too eager, too desperate. Come on, Dad. Just one sip. Flossy worked hard on this. Flossy's voice carried a pleading note, but her eyes betrayed her. Cold, calculating, waiting for me to die. I touched the glass, felt the cold condensation against my fingertips. Their gazes burned into me. I realized then, refusing forever wasn't an option. They weren't going to let this go. And if I wanted to survive the night, I would have to turn their game against them. I pushed back from the table with what I hoped looked like satisfied contentment, rather than a desperate retreat. Excuse me, I said calmly, I need to freshen up before dessert. As I stood, Milton and Flossy exchanged a glance that confirmed what I already knew. There was no chance they intended to let me leave this house alive. The hallway stretched before me like a lifeline. Family photos lined the walls, graduations, weddings, vacations. Smiles frozen in frames, built on lies and blood money. Each step I took toward the bathroom had to be measured. Too fast, and they'd sense panic. Too slow, and they'd lose patience. Once inside, I locked the door. For the first time all night, I was alone. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, lowering the volume before dialing. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Samuel Ramos, I whispered. My son and his wife are trying to poison me. The dispatcher asked me to speak louder, but I couldn't risk it. Every word was a whisper against the pounding of my heart. I gave them the Beverly Hills address and told them everything. The cyanide bottle, the poisoned glasses still waiting on the table, and how they had already killed before. Stay on the line, sir. Officers are being dispatched. The operator assured me. 20 minutes. An eternity. But it was hope. I flushed the toilet, ran the sink to cover my tracks, and stared at my reflection. My face looked old, weary, but my eyes burned with something new, determination. I unlocked the door. Dad, you okay in there? Milton called sweetly. Dessert's ready. Coming. I replied, masking my fear. Back at the dining table, Flossy presented an apple pie, steam curling from the crust. I made this especially for you, she said with false warmth. Milton urged, just a small piece, Dad. You'll love it. I deflected, stalling for time. Questions about their neighborhood, about real estate, anything to stretch the moments until help arrived. Their patience cracked with every second. Milton checked his phone nervously. Flossy's grip on the knife tightened. Then, salvation. The sound of car doors slamming outside. Heavy footsteps. A knock that rattled the expensive front door. "Air PD! We received a call about a poisoning!" Milton rushed to the door, feigning confusion. "Poisoning? This must be some mistake." I stood, voice steady at last. "No mistake. I called. They tried to murder me." The color drained from Flossy's face. Milton's smile collapsed into horror. "Dad, what did you do?" "I saved myself," I said coldly. Officers swarmed the dining room. The poisoned wine, the juice, the cyanide bottle, everything exactly as I'd described. The evidence was undeniable. Milton's protests fell apart as the handcuffs clicked shut. Flossy stayed silent, her eyes burning with hatred as they read her rights. Neighbors gathered in the street, drawn by flashing lights. Larry, my watchful neighbor, stepped forward. "I told you something was wrong," he said to the officers. "You saved my life." I told him, my voice breaking with gratitude. The house that had glittered hours before now stood exposed as a monument to greed and murder. Months blurred into hearings, trials, endless testimonies. I sold my company to pay legal fees. I sat in court as the prosecution laid out everything: the cyanide tests, the inheritance money, the reopened investigation into Flossy's father's death. When it was my turn to testify, I told the jury what I had seen with my own eyes. I wasn't confused. I wasn't paranoid. I was a father betrayed. The defense tried to paint me as a senile old man. But my memory was sharp, my words clear. 6 hours of deliberation later, the verdict came: guilty on all charges. Milton, life in prison. Flossy, life for both murders. Their empire of lies collapsed in a single sentence. When Milton begged, "Dad, I never meant for it to go this far," I met his eyes one last time. "You stopped being my son the moment you chose money over love." As they were led away, I walked out of the courthouse into the California sun. Empty, broken but alive. In the months that followed, I returned to Phoenix. I turned what remained of that cursed inheritance into a scholarship fund for students of business ethics. Martha would have wanted it that way. And as I sat in my small living room, surrounded by photos that now told a different story, I realized something. Survival isn't just about escaping death. It's about rebuilding after betrayal. Justice was served, but the cost was everything I thought I knew about family. Sometimes the worst enemies live under your own roof, and the greatest strength comes from surviving them.